what is emotional intelligence? And more than that, what's the cost of not being emotionally intelligent, right? And something I see a lot is that, senior executives, a lot of them are sometimes very successful, but end up in a place where they lack joy, they lack enthusiasm, and they don't understand why. Right. So it's like, I don't get it. I'm ticking all the boxes. I've got this and this and this and this, but I feel flat. I feel numb. And this is because of this process of, having to be so strong in this old paradigm of leadership, which means emotionally numb, where you completely numb yourself. Right. But the thing is, if you are not feeling anger or sadness or shame or guilt, the heart is a muscle. So you're not going to feel the positive emotions neither. Right. So it's a muscle. If I don't practice that muscle, or if I tell that muscle not to work, well, it's not going to work. So I'm not going to feel the beautiful emotions and elevated emotions of joy and peace and harmony. But more than anything, I'm going to be in my head all the time, right? I'm going to make all my decisions with my mental body, and my emotional inner compass, which is actually one of our powerful decision makers, is not going to be functioning. So it really sucks, to be honest, not to have emotional intelligence. And, and then I can also say that, you can be intellectually very intelligent and be successful to a certain point in your career. But if you don't have emotional intelligence, you're going to be capped at some point.
Yep.
And that is very, tangible. So that's the first thing, to really show people that they actually need to work on their emotional intelligence, right? And so that is giving them, when we say that, their mind is already kind of giving themselves permission to start to feel again, right? And then there is a whole another dimension, but it's like, we have to give ourselves permission to feel, and then we have to understand that language, because it's a language. It's like learning a new language, right? And emotion is the language of vibration. So we need to start understanding that, and what are the tools in order to support me, be emotionally agile and master my emotions. And so, then we also have to look at our past, right? Because we all have an emotional backpack with all our history that we know we need to look at, and we need to clean, and we need to release some of that, because otherwise it's going to come, what happens in the day, the today is going to come echoing with what's in my backpack, which is going to basically damage my emotional center. So, there is a lot to do, but it's a smooth process. But the key is to feel, as you were saying, I know a lot of Gen Z who have read a lot about emotional intelligence on Instagram or in books or, YouTube, but they are not emotional intelligence because they don't practice it,
Right, exactly. And how do you get teams to practice this emotional resilience so that they can collectively experience it versus just have it be individual activities?
Yeah, well, everything is a system. So an individual is a system, and then a team is another system. So I look at things from a systemic angle, and individuals need to practice resilience themselves, and then the group needs to create a system that is going to enable actually less resilience. So what I mean by that is that, how can we think as teams in terms of procedures, practices, and system that are actually going to ask individuals to be less resilient?
Can you say more about that? What would be an example perhaps that you've used with a client?
Well, if you, let's say, which happens in a lot of organizations these days, right? A lot of people are back to back more than ever in their meetings, right? And now that it's online and that it's Zoom, it's even more, it's even worse in a way, because, you have to go from one place to another, or you from one room to another, you're in front of your computer. So you can be back to back all the time. This is too much. Right? This is simply too much. It's not, it also, we have to understand that, the world has changed. So it's VUCA, right? It's volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And so we need, as human beings, to really understand that we need to support ourselves in order to function in this new world with some new self-care routines and practices, right? But for instance, all those back-to-back meetings are just too much. So can we look at that from a systemic point of view and decide as a community, what are we going to implement? I've seen some organizations I've worked with, kind of have a 5-minute meditation as a mandatory practice for any meetings that's over 45 minutes. Right? So that gives you a breather, even if you're back to back, if you start your meeting like that, it gives you a breather. So that's an example of something that can be implemented in the system that is going to support individuals with their own self-care, individually and collectively, so that they are not being asked to be so resilient because the system gives them resilience.